Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bibliomancy for Beginners. In a rare show of form, we are early for once.
No, we're not.
I mean, it was supposed to be tomorrow. We're early for once. It's true. Today we're going to be talking about The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a book club where we discuss the characters and events of the novels, but we will always give our spoiler-free overall reviews. If you haven't read the book, I believe the movie is supposed to be coming out later this year. I did not double check.
Actually, it is an interesting point of conversation as well. The movie has been delayed because they have to reshoot all of these scenes with Chris in them, because the actor who played Chris was fired from the movie after racist tweets were discovered. And in order to, not watch, so the whole base of the movie was like, nope, we're not supporting the career of someone who is undermining the entire point of this movie. So they fired him.
I think also to the I guess production team, their credit, it wasn't just the fan outcry. They did not waste any time in making that decision.
No, I mean, because I actually didn't hear any, not that I super follow the production of this movie, but I didn't hear any outcry, which is usually the first thing I hear. I just heard they were discovered and he was fired and they're reshooting, and I was like, go guys, go.
That's the correct way to do it.
Yes.
Good job. Yeah, so okay, indeterminate time in the future, still a reason to go pick it up and read it. I'll just read the back of the book to let you know what it's about. If you don't know already, it's a rather prominent title, at least in YA. It got a lot of buzz.
It's been popular this last year, yes.
16-year-old Star Carter moves between two worlds, the poor black neighborhood where she lives and the fancy suburban prep school she attends. The uneasy balance between these worlds is shattered when Star witnesses the fatal shooting of her childhood best friend, Khalil, at the hands of a police officer. Khalil was unarmed. Soon afterward, Khalil's death is a national headline. Some are calling him a thug, maybe even a drug dealer, and a gangbanger. Star's best friend at school suggests he may have had it coming. When it becomes clear the police have little interest in investigating the incident, protesters take to the streets and Star's neighborhood becomes a war zone. What everyone wants to know is what really went down that night, and the only person alive who can answer that is Star. But what Star does or does not say could destroy her community. It could also endanger her life. Angie Thomas's searing debut about an ordinary girl in extraordinary circumstances addresses issues of racism and police violence with intelligence, heart, and unflinching honesty. So yeah, it's a YA book, its own voices, because this is still part of our own voices series. So that's also important to talk about, that this isn't a white person writing a book about Black Lives Matter. It's a black person writing a book about Black Lives Matter for young people.
And to add a note about its popularity, this book is so popular that actually today is the release of, so it came out almost exactly a year ago, and instead of releasing the paperback, which is when this would usually be around the time you see the paperback come out, they just released the new hardcover collector's edition version of this at Barnes & Noble. It literally came out today. It was on the stepladder last night when I was up to do projects. And it's gorgeous. There's artwork in it. There's a bunch of extra stuff. So, instead of releasing the paperback, they released another hard. So,
and not just another hardcover,
your popularity for it,
but a more expensive hardcover, presumably.
Yeah, I didn't actually check the price. I was too busy looking at the inside pretty things. And then Becca was like, "Hello," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Put it on the stepladder. That's fine.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your overall impressions?
Sure. So there's definitely a lot to say about this book, but in terms of spoiler-free impression, I came into this going, I have heard so much hype about this book at this point that there is no way in which it will meet the expectations of this hype, because over the past year it's just become like god status, you know, like people are so talking about it so much, and as people are so popular. And so I was like, I mean, okay, is this just because it's topical? Like, what is happening here? And in reading it, I definitely see the debut author recitis, in which like there are some technical things about the writing that I think that are so, but in terms of the story, in terms of why it's so popular, in terms of what it does, I see why the hype, and I believed it. I think I ended up giving it like 4.5 stars. Just I did have some issues with it, but like, I'm so glad that I read it, and it's one of the few books where I can be like, you know what, that hype, I see you. I see why you're here. Not like, oh my god, why is, you know what I mean, why hype, which is usually where I end up after all this time. So I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading it. I do think that it is a really important book for people to be reading right now. And I have some other thoughts, but I'll save that. But I just think that, like, if you've been wondering if you should read it or not, my answer is yes. Yes, read it. Yes, please, right now.
I just got it from my library. It took forever and a half to get to me, and I think part of it is because it came from Northborough, Massachusetts. Even though there were a lot of free copies closer to me, Northborough got to it first and sent it to me. So I read it in one sitting last night, which wasn't difficult to do. So I should say that like, it's not like a difficult book to read. There are some books that I would not have been okay doing that, and it would have been like a struggle to get through it, but I got through it. It's paced well enough for that. There was one aspect of it that made me very, very mad. And I'll discuss why. It made me very, very mad, because it made me very, very mad. And
I'm not challenging it because I know what it is. It's just funny to me.
People, I'll talk about it.
We'll get to it. We might
I will
put it first.
I gave it 4 stars. So I liked the overall book, like as a concept, as execution. It did what it was trying to do, and it did it well enough that it was a good book. And like Gretchen said, I would say that if you're interested in it, you should definitely read it. This should probably be a book that a lot of high school teachers add to their curriculum at some point if they can. I know that high school teachers sort of are stuck to like the canon of their grades, but maybe like a summer reading book, just so that it gets discussed or something. Because it's definitely,
I think it's a little too edgy for that.
You think it's too edgy?
No, actually, I've had kids in the store even already who teachers have already added it to reading lists, and these are not even high school students that have been coming in. So it is already making its way that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, I guess, aside from like,
it's got a lot of language. Is all.
It's got language, but I don't think it has anything explicitly like R-rated.
No, but I was just thinking enough that a lot of schools would make a fuss. But no, you're right that there are definitely ones even now that would.
I mean, there's swear words in like, I don't know, like Catcher in the Rye has swear words in it too. It like,
they're old. And they become okay when they're old.
I don't know that that's necessarily
because no one understands things anymore. And then it's just bad.
I don't know. Okay, this is I'm just saying, I definitely think that it's something that like kids today should be reading and discussing. Not just reading, but like discussing aspects of. So that's why I say that. So if there's any teachers that stop by here, don't know why you're listening to us, but hey, think about it. Read it if you haven't. It's worthwhile there. Okay.
All right. Well, I think one reason why teachers might show up is just because each passing year we each get closer to that state. So I just think it's kind of inevitable at that point. Yeah, I like what's being said. I we've read a lot of debut novels, I feel, even in just like the past year, and I can't think of one that was quite as consistently strong as this. Both in terms of vision, but also just, flow. Just like having a solid plot and story progression. It's not trying to get anywhere too fast. It knows what it wants. It can take its time whenever it feels it needs to. And I thought just structurally and ideologically, this was a very strong and just solid book. Getting a bit clinical on that one. No, I thought this was great. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, I feel like all of us are like, yeah, so spoiler free is that it's good. Let's talk. So, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun on Michaela's usual thing, which is just like, we're about to discuss spoilers, so leave if you haven't read it, but like, dudes, I'm so excited to discuss spoilers. And like, just discuss. Because again, I think that what Michaela was saying is that this is the book that it lends itself to discussion. It tells you to talk about it. Without telling you to talk about it, which I think is also a really strong part of this book. There is like opportunity after opportunity for it to get like, I don't want to say preachy because that's the wrong word, but like in YA, I feel like usually if like you have an issues novel, there's a tendency for it to get preachy in some kind of a sense, and not that like that wouldn't be completely warranted for the subject matter, but it doesn't. It just lets the characters and the plot speak to what it wants you to think about. And I think that that's also just for another debut author, again, because we have definitely had these discussions a lot. That's difficult to like level, navigate, especially in something with as strong of a project as this book. So,
yes,
I don't know.
You sort of said it, but I'll just reiterate. If you want to read this and you don't want to be spoiled, I'm not sure that you can be spoiled, because there isn't a twist or anything.
Surprise, Khalil dies.
Yeah, it tells you that in the description of the book, and it also happens like in the first chapter of the book. So that's the conflict. That's what it is. And there's not really anything to be spoiled from. So I would recommend listening to us discuss sort of the themes and specifics of this book if you can. If you're super diehard, I don't want to know any of that, then sure, go read it. We all recommend it, and come back and listen to this.
And when we all agree on something, it's a very magical moment because it very rarely happens. That's why this book club works.
I don't know, man. Some of our best episodes are all of us agreeing on either something is great or something is bad.
I think our best episodes are when we agree something is bad. Because when we agree something is good, we're all like, guys, isn't it great? And then we just say that for like an hour.
That's actually what I was worried about with this. So I'm glad it's got like ideas in it and not just a story we enjoyed.
Yeah.
I feel like that will make it somewhat easier too.
Yeah, I mean, so do we want to start, since we do have all these great, wonderful things that we love, do we want to start with what made Michaela really angry so we can
I think we need to.
Just chop off that limb?
Okay. I texted Taylor.
Teen culture.
No, I texted Taylor while I was reading it, something along the lines of, every time she mentioned something like Tumblr or High School Musical or Taylor Swift or Jonas Brothers, I wanted to vomit so much. I was so mad at it, and there is a practical reason for it, as well as just like, it felt disingenuous to me. It felt like somebody our age trying to be like, hey kids, you use the Tumblr, but like, the thing that's frustrating to me is that this book needs to be topical to kids for the next 10 years, and these references will not be. I don't even know if teens today are going to appreciate references like the Jonas Brothers and High School Musical, because that was like our age of Disney, like when we were watching Disney. So the kids today, like there's reruns, but I don't know that they're listening to Jonas Brothers music for sure. They are listening to Taylor Swift, I presume. And like,
I just feel like her version of Taylor Swift is like the what happened to the old Taylor? Oh, she's dead.
Yeah, it's definitely before that happened. And that dates the book for the immediate future. For like the far future, as like this is what it was like in 2016, that will be fine, because then people will be looking back on that time period from enough of a distance to be like, these are topical for that time period. But for the near future, which is when this book is most important, that's going to be an issue.
I don't know that I agree, because one, I don't feel like even in 5 years having a reference you get but don't necessarily identify with, of like, oh, this Jonas Brothers joke, I think that's fine. Because this is such a historical document in the sense that it is a parallel to real historic events, but it also acknowledges them, especially the last pages of like, you know, listing off these people's names. And I feel that if it tried to steer a little too clear of like context, it would have felt a lot flatter than it did.
Can
like
I also
can
just say,
cringe at references.
Sorry, I was just also thinking that like everything you also listed off is like the white people culture in the book as well.
So I cringed at things. I think the only thing that I didn't feel was disingenuous was the references to Tupac, because it's so important to the like structure of this book that like those references felt necessary, and every time it came up there was a reason for it, and like it was part of the discussion. But all of the other references, including like, I don't know, who does she call her husband? It wasn't Drake. It was like she like references a rapper as like her future husband. That also made me cringe. I just referenced the things that I recognize because those are things that I listen to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like those other references also made me cringe. It wasn't that it was a black person talking about white people culture. That wasn't at all what I was trying to get at.
I was also thinking that like even in the immediate future, like you could just be like, oh, white people. Because like honestly, like those things listed together is also what I just like. It's like High School Musical, Jonas Brothers, like early Taylor Swift. I'm just like, oh, white people, and I am white. Like again, for any of you who are not sure about this, we're all white.
Whoa, what?
White is white.
Yeah. I guess I did appreciate that I guess Star liked that stuff as well. Like she was part of that, so it was less like, oh, white people, and more just white teens.
Here's another thing too, right? Like, so even in the immediate future, like this, like the idea of the movement being Black Lives Matter, like that could be, you know, it could very well morph into something else. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was a hashtag for our moment right now, and who knows, like, you know, if in the next 2 years people finally get so mad at Twitter for supporting Donald Trump that they're like just down with the bird. You know what I mean? So like, will that phrase even be the one that we consistently use? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
for me, everything in this book, it felt like this book could only be written right now.
Right.
And so placing it firmly in 2016 for me didn't. Except for the fact that you're right, that they were dated to
they were dated for today. They're dated references for today, which is part of why I was cringing so much, because I was like, teens today don't watch Disney Channel, and in fact Disney and Nickelodeon are not aiming content at teens or even preteens. They're aiming their content at kids, because teens and preteens move to YouTube and Tumblr, and they're not consuming that media anymore. So referencing that feels dated, which is part of why it's so cringy, is because it doesn't feel genuine. it feels like one of us trying to get down with the teens, and the teens being like, I'm on Verve now, or like some other like weird app that we have. What's that new app that everybody's posting about that I still don't know what it does? That literally just came out this week. There's a new app that just came out and everyone's posting about it.
Right. No, it's not very important. I don't know what it is either.
But like, do you see what I'm saying? That like something, that's what it feels like to me. And if it feels like that to me, it feels like that 10 times worse to a teenager reading that.
I know what the app is. I'm not going to say it because that's just going to play into their marketing hands. No, I think there are two aspects here that I want to point out. One is, Angie Thomas is like 28 or 29. So she's rooted in the same cultural references that we are for the most part.
Yeah.
And we are not simply a generation, but in like a cultural period of nostalgia where we do base our childhood identities on the media we consumed. I don't think this could have been a very satisfying book in terms of its characters without strongly committing to that.
Yeah.
Because teens are constantly joking about what they like and what they liked when they were 13, and 4 years later laughing at themselves for that. I think a lot of these references about the Jonas Boys are mixed with that kind of like insecurity that we and these characters had of that experience. And I think that's okay.
You just did a super dad thing by calling them the Jonas Boys. Like, good job trying to connect with the kids, Grandpa Taylor.
It's Joe Bros, God. As somebody who listened to Joe Bros and High School Musical and had like their CDs. No, I get it. I get that. Like, I had that. That was me. But like, I guess my problem is that those characters are supposed to relate to the teens that this genre is aimed at. This book is not aimed at us. It is aimed very clearly at youths and is supposed to be educating them in a way and showing them issues, and if they can't relate to those characters, then that causes a problem.
I guess I also maybe wonder. Sorry.
I just want to say, were we reading this a year ago, I would really be curious about the implications of that idea, Michaela. I can say that we are very late to this party and can read, I think it connected with the teens. I think this book not just made a critical splash, but kind of succeeded in its venture.
I guess I haven't talked to a teen who has read it. I have only ever heard of adults talking about it, so I don't actually know what teens thought about it. This is my assumption of what it would feel if I, as a teenager, had read it. This is what I would have felt.
I mean, I also think that like saying that YA is only aimed at teens at this point is completely disingenuous, because the marketing for like a lot of these like post-Twilight books, it's aimed at the Twi moms. It isn't aimed at young adults, but it's filed there. And so like here's so much. I'm just saying that like
I have an argument to that.
That YA now is solely being aimed at teens, especially because there's also a strong culture of like, librarians reading it, a strong culture of like people our age reading it. Like, I think that at least in terms of like not specific, maybe particularly pertaining to this book, but like in terms of books in YA now, that their marketing is expanding, and the idea of YA for YAs is also expanding, and recognizing that a lot of these like issues novels end up being for more than the youths, as Taylor said.
No, that was Michaela.
It was me.
She went for the Joe Pesci
I'm going to go with the youths. Because it sounds like something Grandpa Taylor would say.
My argument here is that I guess, and this has been a problem for me with YA, especially contemporary YA, that I don't want to read stories about kids in high school. I don't. And that was one of the hard things for me about reading this, was that it was part of the drama was kids in high school drama, and I don't relate to that anymore, and don't want to read it. I lived that. I'm over it. I don't want to have to reconsume it. A lot of the YA that has been popular with older audiences, not all of it, but a lot of it doesn't involve young people in high school. It involves other greater plots, like the fantasy section in general. They don't have to discuss that, but sort of contemporary YA, with maybe the exception of like some folks like John Green, it's really hard for us as adults to look back at kids in high school doing things that we know they'll grow out of and or learn about. Like, I don't need to be told to cut people out of my life if they're being harmful to me. That's something that's a lesson for teens, right? Which was a very big moment in this book.
I mean, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree, because I don't necessarily think that that's true. For all, like,
maybe not all people, like, but
because I mean, just like the sheer fact of, like, you know, the older, I say older, but like I mean, when I say older, I mean older than the age of like 17, that come in and like they're definitely still interested in reading those stories. I think that because there is, like, some people really enjoy the nostalgia factor. Some people really, and I mean, cutting people out of your life because they're damaging, I think, is something that plenty of people are still learning as adults. So, like, you know what I mean? I think that there are a lot of things that these novels teach that maybe you think you've learned, or like you still haven't learned. You know what I mean? I think that they can still be relevant to people depending on where you are in your life.
I guess that's fair. Again, I'm talking from like my perspective at coming into these books, and people who see me talking about YA books, or like even the YA books that I pick for us to read, don't follow kids in high school trends. Like, it's not, I don't want to read that. I don't enjoy reading that. I didn't enjoy that time in my life, and I learned a lot of lessons from that time in my life. I don't need to be taken back there.
That's going to make our next book awkward.
Great.
About middle school, I think.
Oh, even better.
But no.
All right, well, we're like literally at the halfway point in this video.
Oh, we've only talked about Tumblr.
Yeah, we've really super digressed from the actual point of this. So I want to say something about particularly secondary characters. So this is usually Michaela's wheelhouse, so she'll see if she agrees with me.
Yeah.
But what I really appreciated in this book is that she had the ability to make every single character stand out and be someone that I love. And as someone who does not usually connect with secondary characters, because I'm like, this is not their story, I don't care. That was really, really fantastic for me.
Exactly the opposite of my point of view.
I don't know. I just, like, even in the beginning, like, I just, like, knowing Khalil was going to die, and I was like, so I know this arc. They're going to talk about their past and how they were friends, and they're going to make me feel really nostalgic for them, and then he's going to die, and I'm supposed to be sad, and I was like, I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you, book. And then I was still really sad, because I really liked him. And so, like, I don't know, I just felt like a lot of people had, not all of them for sure, but, like, there was more attention paid to secondary characters here than a lot of contemporary YA that I read, where you get, like, cheerleader stereotype and blah and blah. And so it was just, like, it was really nice to have a full-rounded cast of characters.
I think that was actually very important for this book, that none of the characters fall into stereotypes, because the lesson that it's trying to teach is everybody's a person and have, like, reasons for doing the things they do that you can relate to if you give yourself a minute. And, like, it's really easy for... Okay, so this is a Black person writing about Black Lives Matter. It would have been really easy for all of the white characters at her school, or white characters, because one of her friends is Asian, but, like, the rich white characters to be, like, I guess, like, single note racist in the way that, like, endemic racism is, of, like, all of them being that way and not having nuance and interests to them that would be different. And there's way more nuance to them in general. Even the character that she does use as the example of this is a character who has systemic racism built in and doesn't realize it and is insulted that people think she's racist because she has a Black and Asian friend type thing where like she says something and doesn't realize it's racist, and when somebody calls her out on it, she gets angry. Even that character, we sort of see a little bit more too, even though she's probably the least characterized in all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also like that moment when oh gosh, what is not Haley?
Maya?
Maya. I've been reading so many books, guys. I'm like at 50 for the year, and it's the end of February. So when Maya talks about, oh no, Haley's definitely racist, and Star's like, why do you know this? And she's like, well, do you remember that time she made a joke about like me eating cat or whatever? And Star's like, no, what did I do? And Maya's just like, you laughed. And I thought just that small exchange that they have there is just like, it just complicates it even more.
It's also important that happened.
Yeah, because like it's not just like, you know, this is us and this is them. It's like this is this like poisoned culture in which we're all existing. And just that small moment too was really, really fantastic as well.
That nobody is infallible when it comes to systemic racism. That like there's a reason that it's systemic. It's not just white people. Like it's our culture causing it. Type thing. So that was important. I do want to talk about how you guys felt about the two worlds colliding aspect of this. I feel like it was important to show like a rich white community type thing, because that if like the main, if there's like this audience of rich YA white girls and boys reading this, there needed to be some element of it that they're like, that's me. Like it's not that they're rich per se, but that they have more resources than the Black community does in this. But I'm not sure that I felt that this was a two worlds colliding story so much, even though that's like super heavily marketed in the cover.
Mm-hmm. I think in a sense, in like the purpose and nature of the worlds colliding, this is that, but the reason it doesn't feel that way because there's so many points of contact and none of them are like earth shattering. They're just a lot of small moments of like, oh, this person is like their feet in two separate communities, or like two aspects of this space that they live in, and how that, you know, how they navigate that. And that happens for so many different characters that it's like a very slow smush.
And also, I mean, I think for me as well, it never seemed like that because I was just way more invested in the story and the community when she wasn't like at school or sitting in that other world. Like that just kind of felt like dressing on the story, like this thing that was kind of happening off in the corner, and like kind of like showed Star what other people were thinking about what was happening in her community when she like left it, and she was like, yep, that thug, and she's just like, what? Yeah. I mean, and also, but then also showcasing how she had to act in the primarily rich white world, like just trying to like keep her own head down. Because I think what a lot of what this book talks about very well is how difficult it is to speak about, and not like, you know, discussing, but like how to speak up, and like how, you know, when this is the system of violence that you are trying to protect yourself and your family from in many different ways, from the kings, from the cops, like how someone who, and I think she says it at one point that she's like, you know, I always said that if this were to happen, I would speak, but now that it's me, like, you know, how do I best protect those who are still living? And so I think that the other world, like Foot in Two Worlds thing, was more like a lens on which to like view what was happening in this world that we were really invested in, and we're like, no, you should be like talking. It's like, it's just more difficult.
There are aspects of it that I felt could have been pushed a little bit more. There was like a a line towards the end of the book when Chris is there during the riots in their neighborhood in the garden. And he's like, is this what it's like for you guys to be at our school? And they're like, yeah, kind of. And I'm like, I don't know that I believe that, because every time you guys have been at school, you felt integrated into that school. Like, I didn't actually feel like you were outsiders. You, like, not in the same way that one white kid surrounded by people rioting, like, I don't think in 2016 there were white kids rioting because black kids were going to their school. Does that make sense? Like this juxtaposition didn't quite.
I don't think it was meant that way. I think it was in terms of visibility that they were speaking. Like in that,
I guess.
Yeah.
Whenever they were at school, they were visible.
Like a visible difference.
Yes.
I guess.
That's how I took it as well.
But even still, I didn't feel like there was that at their school. Like I think part of it was that they'd been there for too long. Okay.
And in part because I really identified their private school experience with the sort of private school I went to and interacted with a lot. And I definitely feel, because we did have we were so close to Philadelphia that there were students from the city that were perfectly like normal within that community and had been like in my class for years, and they were still always visible despite that. And so it was for me,
it struck like the idea of like, you know, if you have the one African American person in your class, like they can speak for the African American experience.
So
like you're always
the token character.
Yeah, and like you're always aware that they're there, and like if you're talking about a book that involves like slavery or racism in some way, and you're always like, oh, there's this person here. And it, like not in the same way that like you would maybe be able to like other differences, like disability, for instance. Like you don't know if you're discussing a book about depression, if there's someone in the room who's like trying to commit suicide, you don't know. Yeah. But like, you know what I mean? So that's what I took as well. And like that sense of visibility of like always being like, the African American one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So I guess the thing that sort of the reason that it didn't quite jive for me was that I, like Taylor, went to a school that was primarily sort of like suburban white kids with like a handful of, I guess, token minorities. There was like one Asian girl in my class and like 3 black kids. Like there was like a very big disparity between the races. But the interactions that she had in school were only with her friends, so I never got the feeling that she was an outsider, because anytime she was talking with people, they were people that like accepted her completely and that she was integrated in. Well, so like I understand the fact that like there is this idea that she's different, but I understand that that's part of it, but I never felt her feeling different.
Well,
even when discussing her coming from a place with people talking about what was happening, because the only time that happened was a discussion of the walkout. Well, and that's an important thing to talk about too, because I experienced that in high school. But
she has that ongoing thing where she's talking about how she needs to be a completely different person who's
I never saw the different people. This is what I'm talking about. Like she talks about it, but I don't ever see it. And that's something I've heard a lot of. Like when we went to college, I heard somebody give a talk where they discussed the actual mannerisms they use when at Ithaca versus when they're home being completely different, and like the way that they speak. I don't think she ever spoke drastically differently enough for me to feel that, or acted drastically differently, because I got the feeling that she had integrated so much into like her school society that she was estranged from her neighborhood. They talk about that a lot, where she doesn't go to the parties, and she's not like, she's just the kid from the store. Like I didn't feel like she was an outsider at the school. I felt like she was an outsider of the community that she lived in. Does that make sense? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to
I hear what you're saying. Yes, absolutely.
And when this is like, I don't know. I guess I'm not saying that ruined the book for me. It didn't. And I still feel like having that perspective of what it's like to the like local community next to this suburb, this gardens place, even they are acting like they're so far above and not related to these other kids. It's important to talk about as just like a like stand-in for most of white America. But I had this conflict in my head of like being told one thing and seeing another. I don't know. We don't need to keep talking about this. That was just something that I felt. I did want to talk about the walkout though. The like white kids walking out because they wanted to get out of class. In high school, there was a girl in my school that committed suicide, and our school sort of got national infamy. Like kids from my school were like talking on the Today Show and Dr. Phil and like big national news media that like was sort of known. And there's laws on the book in Massachusetts about bullying now because of it. So this was a very big issue specifically in my high school. And directly after that, the teachers gave a thing where they said that they got psychologists and therapists into the school in the library, that anybody that wanted to go and talk could go and talk to them, which basically meant that for about a week, kids were just not going to class and hiding places so that they didn't have to do things. They weren't under the guise of, I'm going to the library to talk with somebody because I'm genuinely upset about what happened. So I lived the life of like, you are being so distanced from what happened here that you're using something as an escape for your own petty issues, where there were kids that were genuinely very upset by what happened. And I was one of those kids that like was genuinely upset by what happened and still went to class. So like that scene was very poignant for me, having experienced something similar, not the same thing by far, but like something very similar. And I wonder what you guys thought about that particular sort of conflict that happened there.
Gretchen?
I don't know if I have anything like important to say about it, because like I just kind of had that moment of just like, really? And like I don't have anything intelligent to say following that, because again, I mean, I didn't go
Did
to
you
a
feel
public high school.
Did you feel that was genuine though, like when you were reading that happening? Because I was reading it and going, this happens, and like I was wondering if there were other people who like didn't experience something like that like thought that was outrageous.
I mean, okay, so I've never experienced that, and I never went to school. So like the idea of like a high school community, like it doesn't mean the same thing to me that it means to other people.
The homeschooling walkout would be a
a
different political moment.
Yeah, this is very different. But so like, so I mean, I wasn't like, and I think it speaks maybe for my age that like my cynicism as well. That like I was like, really, no, this can't be oh my god, this is a thing. So you know what I mean? Like I had to go through the 5 stages of grief in like 2 seconds. It's like I was like, no, this is probably definitely a thing, and I hate people. So like that was like in the sense of reading that scene, it was like just like this whole gambit of emotions for me. But I eventually came around to, yeah, this is unfortunately probably definitely a thing.
Yeah, I likewise don't know how much I have to say that's substantive, but the moment certainly rang true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it talks about it hits on a thing that is not often talked about, and she didn't dwell on it. Like aside from like sort of calling Haley and Maya out on participating in it, that it doesn't become like a major theme or issue, but it
Mhm.
talks about something very prevalent in our culture, which is like not bystander culture so much as like the next big issue comes along and everybody tweets about it for 2 days and then it's gone type thing, where like you're so sort of self-serving in it, where it's to
Mhm.
make you feel better and doesn't actually help anything.
Not necessarily even make you feel better, but it is a very performative
Yeah.
act. And
And
if we were really, really getting cynical, we would say, in some ways, putting like the flag motif over your Facebook picture, that sort of act that's very divorced from actual
Well, and the fact
commitment
that
or
like
investment
those
into
kinds of
things.
things are, it's like it's only like the big cause as well. You know what I mean? Like there are other things that are happening, or like other bombings or shootings that are just as deadly, but because like one happens to be in like France and the other is in the Middle East, and not that either one of them
Exactly.
is worse or better, but it's just like what people choose to perform about as well is also very telling, because they're not choosing to perform for everything. It's like the biggest headline on the newspaper that day gets the Facebook frame or whatever.
But it's also those communities we consider ourselves to identify with, not even to be a part of, but the ones that we feel are deserving of that attention. So that's why comparing, say, France to the Middle East, where there are constantly devastating things happen that don't really get not even attention, just emotional investment.
Desensitization as well.
Yeah.
It's just like another one. And I mean, like in a way that like some people are now feeling about school shootings in our own country, like another one. And it's like there's but then not doing anything besides the Facebook frame.
That's the issue that I wish that she had dwelled a little bit more on. Like she calls it out in like a very subtle way, but she doesn't actually. I don't know. It would have maybe gotten too mixed in if she had tried to do too much. But like that's an aspect of our culture that I find very needing of critique right now. Of like you can tweet about Black Lives Matter all you want, but you're not actually doing anything about anything. Even if you are genuinely tweeting about Black Lives Matter. So even if there were like you never see the students that participated in this protest thinking I'm going to protest. I'm going to participate in this protest to say something. You only see these kids that are doing it really as like, I'm going to get out of class because I have an English test that I don't want to take. But even if there would have been students there that would genuinely be thinking I'm protesting something and then feel accomplished for that. Like I stood up for something when they didn't actually stand up for anything because it never cost anything to them, and that's the allegory of like the social media feed being the protesting place. Like sure, I can go to Washington and march with everybody when everybody marches, but what am I actively doing in my day-to-day life to cause change? Am I going to communities in need or reaching out to people, or if I have resources like money and time, am I spending it to actually forward this change? No,
well, and
you're
I think
not.
you just used a really important word too, which is cost. Because
Yeah.
I think that it juxtaposes really well with just like Star's own internal battle of whether just to speak.
Yeah.
Because just to speak to her, for her, will cost so much. And for these white kids to walk out of class, it costs them nothing.
Nothing. No.
No matter if
it
they were doing
benefits
it.
them in a lot of cases. Like
So like, and I think that was also a really powerful thing to juxtapose of like this activism versus like actively speaking, and like what it will cost people on both sides, like, you know, to the African American community to speak. Do you see that even when the barber, what's his name? I can't remember any names. I'm sorry. Like
it was a
speaks,
Mr. something, like a Mr.
Yeah, and like that's an immediate cost. Like anyone who tries to do anything active has an immediate cost in the African American community, basically, and like these white kids are just like, I'm going home.
Yep.
And again, whether or not you were doing it genuinely, there was no cost to them.
Yeah. And I guess that's why Chris's choice to stay during the riots felt so much more important, because there was a cost to him at that point. Like he was putting his physical self in danger, even though he still didn't really do anything to change anything. It was him saying, you know, I'm not gonna just walk out of my school. I'm going to stand with you. Right? Like the difference there. But I don't know. Anyway. Other people can talk about
like it. No, I mean his character makes that choice even later during the riots.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, my choice is to stay and endanger myself because this is important for me to support you.
Yeah.
So although I did really like when they were like discussing how the white people in horror movies are always like, we should split up.
And then he later was like, we should split up. I'm doing that white people thing that y'all were talking about. Yeah.
That was really funny.
There was like some comedy in there that like tonally felt off.
I know, I agree, but it didn't make it any less funny to me.
It was still funny, but it was like laughing at yourself type funny. But it also just like, if the riots here are supposed to be the crescendo of this, of like, this is the emotional crescendo that we're reaching of this anger and this dissatisfaction, we're making white people jokes right now. That's not...
I think a bit of tension was needing to be broken in between those parts, because the last 100 or so pages of this are pretty high stress. So having kids be goofy a bit was, for me, all right. Also, this just had like some really solid joking in it.
I mean, yeah, it was funny. It was good jokes.
I also agree as well that like the joking for me like brought back the humanness of it. Because I think like if you watch a lot of, I don't know, like action movies, like you get to the riot or like the fight scene at the end and it's blah blah blah, and like there's this way to like cartoonize in a way what's happening. And I think that what I liked about the humor is that, especially when it was tonally off, it just reminded me that it was a very like there were humans here. Because I mean I'm a very tonally off humor person. And so like it just, for me, it even in this like big moment of like the riot, even in like the bigger moments, I was like, but this is how like there are humans here that are being impacted, and I like being brought back to that.
I think though, I don't know. I guess just I've been thinking a lot about comic relief, especially in film this week. So reading that and reading this, it felt tone and the use of comic relief is really difficult to do. And while it wasn't done badly, I don't know that it was done effectively. Does that make sense? Like it didn't build for me. Like it was there and it was good in its own sense, but for me it actually kind of detracted a little bit from what was going on, and that's giving Angie it's giving Angie Thomas a lot of props, because it's hard to do well first. So she did it fine. It was just like I kind of wish that in this moment when we're going in between like Star throwing tear gas at police officers and her father's shop being burned down, that this like comedic moment in the middle like took me out of what was going on. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
I mean, again, I think that's why humor is like the most difficult thing to do, because very few jokes will land universally for all people. Like, you know what I mean? Because like I found that really nice as like I said, like to bring me back to a touchstone of like, this isn't just a sequence of events. Like this is a sequence of events for people. But like again, it's very, very difficult to have jokes land.
Right.
for
and
every
they did.
person.
They were good. Like, I think that are people being murdered upstairs, Taylor? What is happening?
I think someone's like drilling into my wall.
Interesting. They're breaking in. They're tapping your phone lines.
Something.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was another thing. Again, like I gave this book 4 stars. It was like really well done, but I wanted it to be better. So this is like another element of those things where it was like really well done, but I wanted it to be better.
So not to like totally derail this, but so she has just released the cover art for her next book, and it is about a aspiring female rapper in the same community that Star is from.
Okay.
And so I'm very interested to see now where she goes, because she has such a strong handle on so many things, just from like a critical perspective of like just ignoring again the fact that this book is something that needed to be right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like it was also so well done that I'm just excited for anything she writes next, to see how she evolves as a writer.
And I definitely think that she's a very talented writer and storyteller, because this book could have gone very bad very fast, and it didn't. So.
I mean, anything that like, I mean, the first, I have the arc that I got from work, and so like the back of it is just like a novel based on Black Lives Matter is essentially the first bold sentence, and when you come up with something that is so specifically a project novel, like I said in the beginning, like when I saw that I was like, oh boy, like this could go so many different ways, and like anything that is specifically a project novel that wants to talk about something and teach about something, particularly I found in like children's and young adult, like no matter how emotionally poignant the topic, like written poorly, it just ends up being something that no one wants to read because they're being talked at, not talked to. Yeah. And that's what I felt about this, was that it, despite being a very, very specific project novel, it was a human story.
Yeah.
That allowed you to think without, I mean, it did come out and say certain things, but like not in any way that ever felt disingenuous.
Right. And I think that comes from being so very thoughtful to the community and the characters, that all of these people felt real. It didn't feel like somebody talking about these issues, but like what it's like to live these issues. Right? And that's very different. Yeah. And seeing all of the different perspectives on the same sort of thing, where like all of these characters have a different relationship to what was going on. And like all of their different perspectives adding to the story instead of just being part of it.
I mean, just even... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, sorry I had to interrupt you for this one. I was just going to say, and I, for one, am really excited for the Garden Heights expanded universe. I'm envisioning
the Garden Heights cinematic universe. The Garden Heights.
Because that's probably going to get a movie adaptation too, and so we can just start getting this whole, I don't know, social justice mirrorverse, a la Gotham or something.
Perfect, flawless, good,
perfect.
Do you guys have anything else that you sort of wanted to talk about? I feel like I brought up a lot of things and like you guys didn't get to talk as much about stuff that you thought, and I feel bad about that.
I think the only thing, I think we kind of touched on it, was that like for me what made this book was not just the community but the family, and like her family structure and her parents and like her extended family and like her relationship with Seven and just all that kind of stuff. So I don't have anything constructive or like substantive to say about that, except for the fact that like I loved the family of this novel and the community of this novel, and that's why like I'm so excited that there is going to be the Garden Heist multiverse, because like It's just
that's where she
that's
shines.
one of her strongest
Yeah.
her strongest aspects. So that's the concise version of that.
Cool.
Right. Okay.
That's an hour
It is an hour. We did
on the
it.
dot.
Well, we're gonna go a little bit over because we have to talk
Sure,
about the next
sure.
book. Next book's Taylor's pick. Do you want to talk about it? I have it here. I can show it.
Yeah, thank
Ta-da.
you for showing it because I don't have it on hands. We're going to be reading Being Fishkill
Mhm.
by Ruth Lehrer, which is a book I got as an arc off like the Hornbook magazine's discard pile of like, hey, these are books you've got, they're free for you now. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I chose it to be the Own Voices because from what I started reading and the reading I did around it, it is a queer story, possibly a queer romance, but it's just a very interesting and weirdly funny book so far of like the couple chapters. So I think even if it is about approximate 13-year-olds, Michaela, in school, you might have fun.
13-year-olds in love? I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't, like I said, I don't know how much love there is, but it's definitely
Affection. Moderate
No,
affection.
it's a little more than gal pals, Gretchen. There's a blood
Is
pact.
the climax them holding hands? Because then sure, yeah. There's all this sexual tension, and then they finally hold hands.
No, but it is a book about, like, I guess, class and presentation and things like that. Plus,
All right, I'm into
the
it.
main character's name is Fishkill, Carmel. Secondary character's name is Duck Duck, so what don't you want to read this for? Yeah.
No, okay.
Francesca Leah Block all over again.
Yeah, so I already changed the Goodreads books to it, so that's all set up. If you are looking forward and you're like not sure about Being Fishkill, I mean, obviously we recommend that you read it because we're going to be discussing it at the end of next month. But if you're looking farther into the future, Gretchen and I have also picked our next 2 books, so you can sort of look at that as well on our Goodreads page, which is linked below. And follow our Twitter because I've been trying to make sure that the book club Twitter has remained active and sort of tweeting out funny stuff once in a while, just as a reminder that y'all should be reading certain things. And I think that's it as far as like stuff. Yeah, so we'll see you again in a month.
If you want to join the discussion about The Hate U Give and want to expand on something that we talked about or think that we didn't talk about something, because obviously we only have an hour, and a book like this is not something that you can fully discuss in an hour. Please feel free, even though this will no longer be live, to talk down in the comments. Michaela, I would say, and I check the comments, but really it's Michaela. And then she's like, hey, dude, someone commented on a thing. And I was like, hey, thanks. Because she gets the notifications for that. So yeah, just talk to us down in the comments and keep the discussion going. And yes, talk to us. If you're interested, I did just also review All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Keeley, which is a similar novel to The Hate U Give. So if you're looking for somewhere else to go after The Hate U Give, I would really recommend that one. So you should check that out.
Yes. Our YouTube channel has other content that Gretchen and I do. I know. Shock and awe.
And I'm not usually a part of that, but I don't know. If you want to shoot me a message on Twitter and talk about a cyborg manifesto, that's where my head is at.
Also, flawless. All right. We'll talk to you guys in a month. Or in the comments below if you have something to add or something to say. And yeah, we'll be around to discuss stuff because I felt like I commandeer stuff a lot there. But I don't know. There we go. Talk to you guys again. Hope you're having lovely lives and stuff. even with all of the terrible things going on, and keep educating yourself. Also, read Own Voices stuff because it's a lot more genuine than the other stuff. Bye.